Hello everyone, welcome to Two Car Pros. My name is Ryan and today we're going to be taking a look at how to change the fuel pump in a 2003 Chevrolet S-10. This also applies to the Chevrolet Blazer. This also applies to the GMC Jimmy and I think the Isuzu variant of those. There's a couple trucks this applies to. They're all exactly the same, and the way I do this video applies to the SUVs as well, because there's two schools of thought when you're doing fuel pump. There's the take the bed off about this much to gain access to the fuel pump school of thought, and then there's the drop the tank school of thought. And I subscribe more than drop the tank because two reasons. If you move the bed back, you only really have like 1.5 feet or so to work. It's a little cramped and a little difficult to maneuver tools and stuff, especially when you get down to taking the collet off of the top of the tank. And of course you could just remove the bed completely, but that's a whole other step and you're gonna need more than one person to do it. And I like to make these videos as single person as possible, just in case you're doing repairs by yourself. Also, if I just took the bed off, you wouldn't be able to do that in the SUV application, and that's not fair to the people watching these videos that are watching for their Blazer or something like that. With all that out of the way, make sure you're donning some safety glasses and some gloves, as gasoline is very corrosive, and if you get it in your eyes, it is no fun. Let's go ahead and jump in. So what we're gonna do before we do any kind of electrical work in a vehicle is we're gonna remove the negative battery terminal cable with an 8mm socket or wrench. There we go. And we're gonna take the cable and we're just gonna store it down in a way so it doesn't accidentally touch, because it's really easy on this battery terminal type. Make sure it doesn't touch while we're working on the vehicle. The next thing we're gonna do is over here on the filler door area, there are 3 7mm bolts that hold the filler neck to the body of the truck. So those need to come out. There we go, there's the last one. Now we can see that this can move independently of the body. So we're underneath the vehicle right now, between the muffler here and the gas tank, and this is one of the bolts that need to come out in order for you to drop the tank. And right up in there is a long thread, and you want to hose that down with WD-40 like I already have. This is the other bolt you're going to be removing. It is basically on the frame rail, and you can see that I've already hosed it down with WD-40, and we're just going to let that sit for a few minutes. The next thing we're going to do is remove these 2 lines off this black box here. There we go. So the way to get this connector off is to squeeze both sides of it down low, like this, and then pull straight back. And there we go. All right, so basically what you're looking at is where the fuel comes down from the body of the truck into the gas tank. And you see that hose clamp way back there? It's going to be basically impossible to film. We need to loosen that and then pull the hose off of the gas tank so we can drop it without issue. So let's go ahead and do that. And it looks like it's just a standard screwdriver or a socket, not sure what size, and you just loosen it, it comes off. Alright, so the way I got mine loose off camera, it was a long extension and a swivel with an 8mm socket there, so now we can pull that hose off of the fuel tank. Alright, so what I did was take the fueler neck off of this side of the tube, and that gave me enough clearance to pull the tube further this way toward the body of the truck. It was much easier than trying to do it with the filler neck actually attached, so taking that off is definitely the key. It's pretty easy. You just remove the hose clamp and then wrestle this out and you're all good to go. Alright, I've got my transmission jack here nice and installed underneath our fuel tank, and we're going to remove that nut there And that bolt way over there I showed earlier. Now if you're doing this on the ground, it's a good time to notice that you can rent one of these for floor use. It just basically looks like a regular floor jack, but it has this transmission mount attachment to it so it can hold a wider object. You can alternatively use a jack that doesn't have that and just be really careful. And if you can, now is a good time to empty the tank. This one's pretty empty. The fuel sending unit's broken in it, so I can't really tell whether it is or isn't, but I tried to drain fuel from it earlier and it was sucking up air, so I'm fairly confident it's pretty low. If you can, it's a really good idea to make sure you don't do this with a full tank of gas because it's heavy and it's really unwieldy when it has a bunch of weight in it, so you want to make sure that that fuel tank is as light as possible. Alright, next thing we're going to do is use a 15mm socket to remove that upper bolt and that nut in the front. There we go. There's the bolt, comes the nut on the front. There's the nut and washer. And now we can start letting the tank down gradually. We want to make sure it's in a nice controlled descent. And we don't want to let it just plop onto the ground because there's still lines attached to the top of it, but there's really no way to get to them unless the tank is in a little bit more workable of a position. Alrighty, where you're looking now is on the outside of the frame rail. These bolts actually hold that L bracket to the gas tank straps, and they need to come out so the gas tank can drop because right now it's just kind of sitting on that L bracket. It's important to note that this one is out and free, but due to the unique way this is designed, the bolt's too long to clear the housing without really bending this line out of the way. This emergency brake cable out of the lane. So I'm just gonna leave it in there. I think that's fine, as long as it doesn't go anywhere. I can move this, there we go. Just felt that L bracket get loose, so yeah, I gotta remove those 5 bolts. We got our fuel tank down in a controlled fashion. Making sure we don't just let it flop down. And once basically there's enough space above it in order to access the fuel lines, you want to leave it there so we can take off the rubber lines. Alright, so go ahead and look around the top side of your fuel tank here to make sure all your connections are removed. I'll go into further detail once it's down. I would have shown you how to do everything, but I have to be where the camera is in order to work on it, so I'll show the aftermath. And I removed this side of the line from the top because that was proving very difficult to get to, so it was easier just to remove the line side. And then just look around your gas tank again to make sure there's nothing holding on to it, no electrical connectors. There's 2 of them on the top there you have to disconnect, but we should be ready to remove this thing. All right, now we should be able to remove this thing, and before we go any further, I want to point out that the front of this gas tank kind of looks like a hippo face. I thought that was kind of funny. So, irrelevant facts of hippo faces aside, we can go ahead and lower this down, making sure we don't drop it off of our transmission jack. The one thing you want to kind of keep an eye on too, and what's actually happening to me right here, and why this isn't coming down any further, is the fueler neck is stuck on the inner frame rail. So you want to make sure that that clears by walking the fuel tank forward a little bit. Nope. And now, our fuel tank is removed. All right, here's our fuel tank on the ground. I'm gonna go ahead and zoom in on the top of the fuel pump. And what I've done already is I've gotten some shop towels and cleaned up the area around the opening because we don't want any dirt, or at least as little bit of dirt as we can, to get into the tank. We want that to be fairly clean. We also need to make sure that this hose is disconnected by pressing on the 2 safety tabs on the side and then just wiggling it off. It's pretty easy. And we also want this line as well off. I believe this is the actual fuel sending line. And you just pinch those tabs, pull it straight back. Might fight you a little bit, but it's not bad. And we need to set this aside and save it because this goes back on the truck. And we want to make sure that we have it positioned the right way. So it came off like this. We can actually go to the truck right now and put this back on just to make sure we have it nice and pre-formed in such a way that it'll make the installation easier. Alright, so in order to remove this, we need to push this safety out of the way at the same time that we're rotating this, and they can be on pretty darn tight, so you might need a chisel or something in order to break it loose. It's important to note too that I have my fuel tank here against my toolbox to kind of use as a you know, a stable foundation. You can also use just a wall, just something that's not going to move, because if you use a hammer and chisel or a punch, see, now we're in the situation where the safety is actually in our way while we're trying to rotate this assembly, so we need to figure out how we're going to deal with that. You know what? That worked perfectly. So there we go. A nice big punch and a hammer came right off. All right, now we can remove our fuel pump out of here, making sure that we tried our best not to get any kind of dirt or contaminants inside of the tank, because any kind of big dirts or contaminants can actually get in our new pump and clog our new filter or stuff like that. Oh yes. Out of there, and this thing has, it's basically a little bucket at this point, so we want to go ahead and dump that back into our tank, because there's like, I don't know, a quart in here or so. Clog the fuel lines too, because it'll drain out of that as well. Now we can move this onto our workbench. All right. So the part number we have today is an AC Delco 193698898. I will leave a link down below in the description. I'll leave a link down below in the description to this exact part number. I can't recommend anything but AC Delco for your GM product. They are the best. So use AC Delco. We're gonna open it up, and we are greeted with a wiring harness because the new fuel pumps here actually have a different kind of connector than our old one, and if you had a late model car, I think this just plops right in, but this is a little bit older of a car, so we're gonna have to do a little bit of wiring, but it's not that scary. I'll show you how to do it. We can take out our unit here, and we can see that our three lines are the same. You have two little ones on the left and a big one on the right. It just doesn't have that safety, so we need to put that on. And then the other electrical connector is exactly the same. Look in there and make sure that it has the same amount of pins, 3 and 3. That's good, and you know, it looks generally the same. It's just missing the sock and the float. So we're gonna have to transfer that over. It also came with a new seal that we're gonna need to put some WD-40 on before we put it in, so that way it doesn't bind. Some instructions and a new float. We're gonna go ahead and use the new float. It's really easy to install the new float. You just want to make sure that it is going this direction here, and then put it in the hole and push it down until it clicks like that, and you know the float is properly installed. And make sure that this moves freely before you install it in the fuel tank, because if it has like any kind of bind, it's not going to work properly and you'll never get the right fuel level in the truck. But this one moves great. And as per the instructions, I read these, and right here it says that the strainer was changed to from external to internal, so that's why this new one does not have a sock here. Because this one had a sock that went like this on the bottom of the old pump. This one has an internal sock, so you don't need to worry about that. Alright, the next thing we need to do is put on the new seal, and to ensure that it goes on properly, we need to lubricate the inside of it for now with some WD-40. This is just to make sure that the seal doesn't bind when we're putting it on, because it's rubber on plastic, and sometimes that can get sticky and awful. And you want to make sure that the lip is facing towards the top. just like that. And that'll slip right on. Nice and easy. It's a little snug, but that's a good thing. And then we can use some excess WD-40 and smear it around the outside as well, the part where it actually meets the mating surface on the tank. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. All right, the next thing we wanna do is clean the inside of here. I have some carb spray on my chop towel here. And you wanna clean that inside mating surface where the fuel pump actually connects to the gas tank. And then we can replace our fuel pump, and it has a timer on this side of it, just there, and it matches a timer down there, so there's only one way to put it in. And you want to put this in gingerly. You don't want to just ramrod it in there. And it does have a little bit of a compression to it, like there's a little bit of a spring. So it's okay if you push it down like that. So it should look like something like this, but we need our collet, our securing collet that actually puts it on there. Line up the grooves like that. Make sure your gasket isn't binding. And then, for our old friend Hammer and Chisel to help us out here. There we go. There we go. Okay. So the hammer and punch are going to be your friends here. Getting it on is definitely more tricky than getting it off. It kind of comes off really easy, but getting it back on a little difficult because it's hard to get it to sit down in all four corners. But it's not impossible. And you're definitely going to need a nice punch. On our old fuel pump here, you can see that it comes with these two safeties, one for the small tube and one for the big tube. There's not one in the middle, and because it's on the line itself. Now, we have to remove these because our new unit didn't come with them, so it's really easy. You just need to grab a little prying utensil and get the safety to clear the rim. If you're doing this in person, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a little tricky to show. There we go. And you want to be careful with these two. They're just plastic and they get brittle pretty quick. And then to install them, you just slide them on. We're going to go do that. And the green one goes to the bigger diameter, and it's really easy to tell because it's the only one that fits. If you try to put this on here, it's going to be too big. And try not to lose them. And the small diameter hose does the same thing. There we go. Slide that off, and that can go onto our new unit. Right. We can install these. They just push straight on. Some GM goodness there. And there we go. Now the tank's ready to go back in the car. And while we're here, we can actually reinstall this evap line as well, and that just pushes straight on, nice and easy. And the safety for that is actually on the line side, not the pump side, so that's cool. I'm over here by my lift, and we have our instructions here, and there's 4 different combinations that are possible on this vehicle. And I've already identified that it is combination 1, and you can find that by looking up what wires are there. So this combination 4 has 3 wires going to it, to the car, and we can see on ours we have 4, so it can't be that one. On this one it says it has black large gauge, black small gauge, gray, and purple. Well, we kind of have that, but we have a black with a white stripe instead of black large gauge, so it can't be that one. This one over here has a purple and white wire. We have a solid purple wire here on our side of the harness, so it can't be that one. So it must be this one, black with white, we have that. Gray, we have that. Purple, got that too. And just plain black, which is exactly this electrical connector harness here. You can examine those thoroughly and make sure that you are correct. And what we're gonna do is snip the head off of this. I would cut it just there. I mean, you can go all the way if you want to. This connector is going in the trash. They don't even make pumps for that anymore. That's why we're going through the headache we're doing today. And then we're going to strip the wires away and then put some new electrical connectors on to interface with the new pump. Go ahead and snip this connector off like that. And then we can grab our wire strippers. And if you have old school wire strippers, that's fine. I just have these Trick Auto strippers. that are made by Strip Packs, and they make this kind of thing really easy to just, you know, kind of go through quickly and get them all done. Especially if you're clumsy like me and you tend to take too much off, this is a really good way to get uniform cuts. Like that. Now all 4 wires are nice and stripped, are ready to interface with our new harness. We can grab our quick connectors that came with our kit. Now, you could use solder and do it properly with heat shrink and make it look all nice, but we're not doing that here today. We're gonna do how it came in the kit so we get the full experience. Now we can look on our combination, number 1, and we can see that on the new plug side, the GT280, which is what this new electrical connector is called. We're gonna start from the top and go down. Orange and black needs a red gauged connector. So we can go ahead and insert that into our wire, just like that. There we go. And what you want to do here is grab your wire crushers and give it the beans. Like that. We're gonna give it a little tug. Don't Hulk tug it, but just make sure it's not gonna fall out. Make sure it's making a good connection, which this is, so we're all good to go. And then we can see orange and black go to black/white. So we need to look for the white and black cable. That's not this one. This one's solid black. So the other one is black and white. So we know that's our guy. Just like that. Crush that. There we go. And then that's not coming out. Give a nice a slight tug. Don't Hulk it out. There we go. And actually our wiring harness can kind of hang from it now, because the wiring harness doesn't weigh much. And then we can just keep going down the list. The next one on our list is a gray wire. That's easy. And it needs a blue connector. So here we go. Tug, perfect. And then we can go down here. Gray leads to gray. Okay, well, that's easy. You want to make sure that the wire is fully seated into the quick connector too. You don't want to like just grab it by the tip of it. You want to make sure it's really sunken down in there. Oops. So that way when you crush on it, the copper is being crushed. You know, not the insulation. There we go. Next we can move on to purple. Okay, purple needs a red quick connector into purple. Oh, that's easy. So we know that purple goes into this red connector. Can sink that bad boy in like that. You can even put all the quick connects in at once on the workbench. So it's a little easier. I'm just doing it this way because I didn't think of it until just now. There we go. Which hasn't come out and it doesn't, so we're good there. And then purple leads to purple. I'm gonna go ahead and I like to spin the copper just a little bit just to keep the windings, you know, together so they don't kind of mushroom out or make it difficult to go into the correct hole. See, I made the connection a little too long in this purple wire, so I'm going to trim a bit of the copper off. Like that. Tug, perfect. And then the last one's easy because process of elimination, and it's color coded, black goes to black. So the only one that is actually a mismatched color on combination 1 is the first one. Orange and black goes to black and white for the GT280 electrical connector. And the black one goes to a black wire using a blue gauge connector. I think that's a 14 gauge. Just like that. Tug it out. Awesome. So now our new GT280 connector is attached to our S-10's wiring harness. Now we can hook up the tank, and basically we're home free. All right, on the side of the gas tank here, I noted when we were taking it out that it probably could have just left this fueler hose on, and then it would just kind of bend out of the way like this, or yeah, like this, while you're removing the tank. And I think it will be easier to get the hose clamp on outside of the truck. And you just got to make sure that timer there is lined up with this, and then make sure that your hose clamp is behind the barb, because if it's not going to seal, and then you'll have a fuel leak. There we go. And now we can put this back in the car. All right, now that we're underneath the vehicle, we want to make sure that we get our gas tank more or less aligned to where we want it. And at this stage, all I'm looking to do is plug in our fuel lines and our electrical connectors and make sure that the fuel filler hose is going to the right spot. And we'll worry about strapping it in place later. It's in a pretty good position right now. Okay, so at this point we can plug in our electrical connectors and our fuel lines, which are fairly easy because they just connect, send, and return. Big one like this. There we go. You couldn't see it, but it just goes on. And you want to make sure that the tangs of the safety match up the holes on the line. There we go. Our send and return line and evap lines are hooked up. We want to go ahead and plug in our electrical connectors, but that side is kind of hard to see because it's on the other side of the tank. There we go. Got our new harness. I'm going to plug in the old one. Actually, no, I'm going to plug in the new one first, that new 280 plug. And they only go on the one way with the safety pointing up towards the bed. Goes straight on like that. Very simple and straightforward. And then our other connector can go like this on there. Now, here is an important thing. You can see that we have some extra wire just kind of slacking about. And over here on the left side of the camera is actually the drive shaft and exhaust. So if those wires ever touch that, it could spell trouble. So we're gonna go ahead and zip tie all that mess together so it doesn't have any free slack travel to just do kind of what it wants. So let's go ahead and do it. Because we want some free travel with it, just in case we need to ever remove this tank again. We don't want to just have it rip on down, but we don't want these wires to be free just floating around either. So kind of got to be a balance here. There we go, good enough, as long as it's not gonna touch the exhaust or drive shaft. That looks pretty good. I'm okay with that. There we go. Okay. And the hippo face returns. Go ahead and I'm actually just going to level my tank a little bit because I have this nice transmission jack that enables me to load level, which is cool. Because I want to put it in as flat as I can because it goes in the truck flat. Like that. Make sure that that's in a good spot. Very cool. And then we can just send her northward. And then you also want to make sure you're not, hitting anything. If it binds real hard, it might be making contact with the drive shaft or the top of the bottom of the bed, and you don't want that. Because you don't want to accidentally push your truck off the lift or jack stand or however you're working. So at this point we can actually put on our lower L bracket here that we removed earlier with those 5 bolts, and that will hold the front of this, and if we put the strap back on it, then it will really hold it for us, and then we only really need to worry about putting the rear strap on, and the gas tank's basically installed. Alright, with our L bracket kind of loose, it's easier to get this strap back on. There we go. Perfect. So now this is basically on fairly loosely, except for our threads are not poking through the hole. Basically what I'm doing is trying to get this to sit back into this notch here, and it's been a little difficult. but not too bad. That's what the finished product needs to look like. All right, next we're gonna tighten those 13mm bolts up. And these are the bolts that hold that L bracket on the front of the gas tank. Okay, so that's all 5 bolts here, nice and tight. So that way it'll hold the front of our gas tank on. All right, what we can do next is replace the rear strap for our gas tank. And this one might fight you a little bit. But we just want to get the bolts started and then we can tighten it up in a minute. And luckily the bolt's very long, so that's nice. Jump out of that one, so that's cool. Now with both of our straps that are on loosely, we can go ahead and get rid of our transmission jack or regular floor jack, depending. And we can just tighten that nut in the front up and this bolt in the back up, and the tank's installed. All right, we can grab our 15mm here. Tighten the back one up. Make sure these are nice and tight. They're fairly big bolts and they hold a lot of weight. There we go. And you can kind of jiggle it, make sure it's not going anywhere, and it's not, so that's good. All right, then we want to reconnect these lines we removed earlier. And these are easy. They just install and then press on. Make sure that this EVAP line is in its home on the tank like that. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Make sure you get 2 good clicks out of those, 1 each, to make sure that it's not going to leak any vapor. Next thing we're going to do is reinstall our fuel filler neck. I'm going to go ahead and put the hose clamp back on the hose. Slide that down in a convenient angle. And then we can reinstall this into our fuel hose. There we go. I want to make sure that that's nice and seated down in there. And then we can tighten up that hose clamp. What's kind of cool about GM stuff is most of the time the hose clamps are 8mm, and this one is one of those. Just like the other side, you want to make sure this is on nice and tight and that the hose clamp is actually behind the barb. So you can kind of feel that with your finger. I can feel that it widens right here. So this is perfect. We can go ahead and insert this back in its place. That's what that should look like. It should look like that. And then we can put the bolts back in. All right, we can tighten up those 7mm bolts that hold the fueler neck to the body. Just like that. And replace our gas cap. Alright, and then we can go ahead and reattach our negative battery terminal cable. Making sure we just touch it to see if it sparks, and it doesn't, so we're all good. Tighten that up using our 8mm socket. There we go. So that's how to replace your fuel pump. It's pretty straightforward. It's a little trickier. I wouldn't really put this as a beginner repair. This is more of like an intermediary type repair, but it's totally doable in a driveway or a garage type situation with a floor jack. Just go slow, take your time, and make sure you siphon as much gas as you can out of the tank to make it as light as possible, so it's really maneuverable. Thank you so very much for watching. Make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you next time.